Well, as we welcome you to the second half of this morning's edition of News and Views right here in Salam Media. Today, an important event is actually taking place in South Africa at the Nelson Mandela Foundation, and we are talking about commemorating 30 years of the genocide that had unfolded in Bosnia. July 1995 is when it all started, and during the week, on Wednesday evening, I hosted a discussion with a sister, Jasmina Khan from Bosnia, and she reflected on the 30 years of this genocide, the trauma associated with this genocide. And she made a very, very powerful statement. She says, we will never forget and we will never forgive, because this is exactly what it is. Where even until a few days ago, we've heard of janaza salahs being performed for remains of bodies that have been found. We heard about multiple janazas being performed on body parts that were scattered all over. And this was the brutality, this was the savagery of this genocide. And while all of this has been playing out, and we know with the genocide that has been unfolding in Gaza right now, and again, yeah, we had another genocide, but once again, we see a global silence still, as far as the world is concerned, responding to this genocide, a genocide where the people of Bosnia have not recovered. And this is the reason why we are talking this morning with Bosniak and human rights activists. We're speaking with Mahmutćehajić this morning out of Bosnia. Brother Demir, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome and Jazakallah khairan so much for that, for your time.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for having me. You know, I remember being in Johannesburg in 2001 as a part of the representation from Islamic Human Rights Commission. And then we moved to Durban for the UN conference, the famous Durban one. So it's always a pleasure to talk with brothers and sisters in South Africa.
Yes, and once again this afternoon, we've got another event, obviously commemorating 30 years of this genocide here in Johannesburg. So, inshallah, I will be attending this one. But again, once, I'd like to reinforce that this is a genocide that was committed with utmost brutality, utmost savagery. And when I heard the first-hand account from the sister Jasmina Khan, and I mean, she was still a young girl at that point in time. And the question is the global silence, while 30 years later, the people of Bosnia have not even recovered, or they've still remained traumatized with what had actually happened to them.
But first of all, I would like to reiterate that genocide hasn't started on 11th of July. The 11th of July was culmination of 3.5 years of constant genocide. Genocide in Srebrenica is the only one that has been internationally recognized by international tribunals, by the international courts. But all the territory that was controlled by Serbian forces, the greatest Serbian forces, were places where the genocide was committed. Bosniaks, primarily because they are Muslims, because we are all Slavs, primarily because they are Muslims, were persecuted, ethnically cleansed, raped, tortured, starved, killed, with the only aim to completely purge territory from Muslims. We can see the same thing happening in Gaza, happening in whole of Palestine, but on a much greater scale. We were able to organize the resistance in some kind of form. We were able to defend ourselves, even so that international community enforced arms embargo on legitimate Bosnian government that was fighting aggression from a neighboring Serbia, and later on from the neighboring state of Croatia. So it's very hard to say that it's all started on 11th of July when we have a genocide in Prijedor, in Visegrad, in Zvornik, in Foča, from as early as 1992. An international community was watching it all throughout it. They did not allow us to get arms, to defend ourselves, to preserve our dignity, honor. And it was very difficult. It's even more difficult that 30 years after, there has not been any collective responsibility. And I'm not talking about collective guilt. I'm talking about collective responsibility. Serbian society, the society of Serbia and a society of Serbs in general, needs to face up to what has been done in their name. Same as, inshallah, in the future, Jews worldwide have to face up with what has been done, what is going on, what is happening, what is perpetrated by Zionists, in the name of Judaism, in the name of Jewry. Facing up to it is something that I spoke about in Durban in 2001 at the Durban conference, when I mentioned that after Second World War, 11.5 million Germans went through the process of denazification. And that healed the society a lot. They faced up with what was done in their name. You in South Africa, throughout the apartheid, experienced and passed through unbelievable sufferings. I had an honor of meeting late Imam Ahmed Qasim, Rahmatullah, and I had the honor of learning from a number of great men who took part in struggle for equality in South Africa. And you had one process of you may think that it had its shortcomings and it was not fulfilled properly and it has not reached its aim. But the process of truth and reconciliation is something that we never had. Our butchers, those who slaughtered us, they have never been faced up with the fact that they did something wrong. They teach their kids that this was the right thing to do. They teach their kids that they haven't finished the job. Then it is on their kids to finish it, to carry on. This is scary, but it's also humiliating. At the same time, we have a number of hypocritical Western institutions and politicians who are telling us that we should forgive and forget. Never. For a number of reasons. First, why would we forgive to somebody who is not asking for forgiveness? To forgive, you need to have the other side who is saying, I'm sorry, we did wrong, we wronged you. Please forgive us. We'll try to make up for it. There isn't nobody on the other side. It's the minorities, individuals who are attending today's commemoration in Srebrenica.
Yes,
Those are
but also,
individuals from Serbia.
From what you are saying, Brother Demir, one can actually draw many parallels. And, one cannot, obviously compare the magnitude of the
No, I'm
genocide
not doing that.
unfolding in Gaza, but we can draw many, many parallels from what you've just described in terms of what has happened to the people, and particularly the Muslims in Bosnia, in terms of, as you mentioned, the brutality that had unfolded, the indoctrination of generations, of young generations, which we actually see taking place in Israel as well, that indoctrination or that hatred for the people of Palestine. And as you're saying, from generation after generation to actually continue that we are not done, we are not finished with the job. And this is very, very concerning in terms of what you are saying, because again, when one looks at Bosnia and where you are placed, when one looks at Europe as well, and where Europe is heading politically as well, the right wing gaining traction, gaining momentum, right wing governments filled with hatred as well. So when they say the job is not finished, it is a major concern. And especially when people haven't been held accountable, people haven't taken responsibility, and they still feel that they did the right thing. This is of major concern to you, and I suppose even to the people of Bosnia right now.
Sorry, I didn't ask you. I didn't hear your question.
I say from where we are at this point in time in terms of Europe, in terms of the right wing governments, in terms of supremacy, and also Serbia not acknowledging and taking
Not only
responsibility.
Serbia. Not only Serbia. See, in 1993, we were attacked by the neighboring Croatia as well. So we were attacked by both our neighbors. And 30 years later, 32 years later, just a few days back, we had a huge right-wing fascist concert in Zagreb, the capital of Croatia, member of EU, where 500,000 people gathered. 500,000 people. That is out of population of 4 million. That is not minority. That's not few. That's like, imagine 12 million or 10 million people in Berlin listening to the Nazi songs and shouting "Sie Heil." Can you imagine like 2 million Afrikaners in South Africa somewhere, singing the old white supremacist songs and raising a "Sie Heil" signs? This is not minority. This is scary. It's absolutely scary. Europe is such a toxic place. Right wing, I wouldn't say even nationalism. I would, very openly say fascism. It's so prevalent. It's a majority. It is even in the parts where they are openly Nazis, like in Germany, with the AfD. It is almost becoming acceptable. But the other right parties are not less Nazi or not less fascist. They are just not covering their clout better. They're a little bit covering. So it's a step by step becoming a place where the hatred towards others, in this case now specifically towards Muslims, is gonna be and is becoming completely acceptable. The humanization of Muslims is on a stage where there is no even attempt to hide the intentions of clearing Europe of Muslims, the same way. So this is worrying. This is scary, brother. It really is.
Well, it certainly is very, very scary in terms of what you're saying. But again, when we're talking about global silence in the face of the genocide that had unfolded in Bosnia, and perhaps, Brother Demir, you could just provide us that while that fear factor is still there, and as you mentioned, where Europe is heading at this point in time, fascism, ethno supremacy, all of that, while that is still playing out, those deep scars, and provide us with an insight while those deep scars of this genocide is still prevalent in Bosnian society, and I suppose even with younger generation who were not even possibly born when that genocide had actually taken place. Where does this actually leave the people of Bosnia in terms of your concerns? Because you have not come to terms with the genocide on the one side, and yet you remain fearful of what an uncertain future may hold for Bosnia.
Well, first of all, it's very simple. There has not been any closure. We have not received justice. We have not received truth. We are still looking for the bones 30 years after. Today in Srebrenica is janaza of 7 man killed in a mass shooting. But when you talk about the genocide in Bosnia, international community has recognized that the genocide happened in Srebrenica, that 8,372 men were killed in Srebrenica. But in truth, over 100,000 people were killed in Bosnia. So the magnitude the scale is much larger than the 8,000 in those 2.5 in that period of aggression on Bosnia and Herzegovina. But those places were not recognized. So you're not talking about the Bosnian genocide. You're talking about the Srebrenica genocide. To put it in scale, like you have a Rwandan genocide, you have Armenian genocide, you have a Holocaust that encompasses whole. But in Bosnia, international community recognized only a small part and is hypocritically placing all the attention on that small part. I'm not minimizing the event that happened in Srebrenica, God forbid, but the Srebrenica was not the beginning. Srebrenica was culmination. It was the end of the story. It's when they already learned, when the butchers already learned what to do with the bodies, how to clean blood, how to remove all those dead people, how to make them walk in a line and look in front of them the guy who is being shot, how to remove the remains that already been covered with earth so that they cannot be found. So you have remains that been found in 3 or 4 mass graves. How to deny it in the media, how to present it, how to keep silent. There is a code of silence. We are still looking for thousands of people 30 years later, So it is something that we live with every day. We don't have a closure. We are entrapped in it. It's like we live like killing happened yesterday, and it was 30 years ago. We all live like that. Our children get that. We have something that is called passed on PTSD, passed on post-traumatic stress syndrome. Kids who have not been born, they suffer from PTSD. This society is completely traumatized. I had a few years back people from OSCE, that is Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, arriving in my hometown, small village, asking me what is it that people need the most here. And I told them psychiatrists and psychologists, and they laughed. And I asked them, why are you laughing? What's so funny? We have never had any help with facing up with our traumas. And they just carry on. So when you ask me how we, what is the life like? There will be 50,000 people at the Janaza today in Srebrenica. 50,000. Almost every Bosniak, at least once, attended commemoration in Srebrenica. That is our pilgrimage. That is something that we live on every day. And that is something that reminds us that we cannot forget. Because if we do, it's going to happen again.
Absolutely. And I think also, I think what is important to understand is, you mentioned psychiatrists, you mentioned psychologists, because when one cannot treat trauma, and it's particularly when you're living through this trauma for 30 years, the physical scars are there, the psychological scars are there, the mental scars are there for everyone to see. It is open, it is blatant. And I just want to make a point of reference to the women, because again, rape that was used as a weapon of this genocide so widely, and to the extent that many women still suffer this scars. Many of them have had to face up to the fact that they were impregnated by the very oppressors, by the very genociders of the Serbs, children that were born out of rape as well. These are all scars that are blatant, that are open to see, because these children are born, they are growing up as well. So, how does society actually deal when you are faced with something like this on a day-to-day basis, Brother Demir?
Well, the simplest answer to your question, it doesn't. Society doesn't deal with it. Individuals try to do as much as they can. For example, we had recently a situation with a now grown-up woman who was born out of rape, and she was in a very careful way one of the few whose mother acknowledged and brought her up from the early age, teaching her that she is born out of rape, and that lady grew up into very dignified, capable woman, and she campaigned that children born out of rape get recognition in our society. It took her years to even open the discourse in the society. Now in some parts of the country, because of we are very divided on administrative levels, there has been she achieved a legal recognition. There are no compensation or anything like that. It's just recognizing that those people exist. So this is just one of the cases. We are like all the societies. Those women feel ashamed, even so that they haven't done anything wrong. They haven't been helped, and society is weak. What can you do? How can you help? How can you approach somebody who is not being encouraged not to feel ashamed? Speak up about it. So we don't deal with anything. We just carry on. And believing somehow that time will heal, but the time doesn't heal. As I said, we look at these events like they happened yesterday, this morning, and they really happened 30 years ago. If you look at after Second World War, 30 years ago, Europe was economical superpower, was getting united, and nobody talked about it. Now we are still very divided. We are still very emotionally traumatized. We are still remembering on an hourly basis and talk about it. These are the stories that we talk with our friends, the coffee time, the lunch table, picnics, holidays.
Yes, Brother Demir, just finally, in your opinion, in your view, what are you expecting from the world? Because this global silence, and we've seen the inaction on the part of the world in response to this genocide. What is your message to the world on behalf of the people of Bosnia after having gone through this traumatic period of this genocide, and also have never ever got closure, as you mentioned it, and it's 30 years later?
Well, as far as we are concerned, certain recognitions and certain steps have been achieved. Like in United Nations, there are denials, but also there are a struggle to keep up the memory. But the thing, the problem I see in today's world is that we have not learned as a world anything from the Bosnian genocide. We are allowing the Gaza genocide to happen in front of our eyes, and it's happening much faster than it was in Bosnia. And there are a number of reasons for that. It's not just international silence. And when we talk about international silence, we are talking about legal entities. We are talking about the states, institutions, and all this. What is encouraging is that ordinary people are not silent. There are protests, there are movements, there are struggles, there are organizations. There are many Jews who are anti-Zionists, who see that what is being done is not good, and they speak up, and this is encouraging. The one of the comparisons in why is the genocide in Gaza happening so faster is for the number of reasons. Geography plays its own rules as well. Gaza is flat. Bosnia is very mountainous, very hilly. We had places where to hide. Where do people in Gaza hide? It's and this is being watched by the Egyptians, by Jordanians, by Saudis, by billions of so-called co-religionists or Muslims. I like to say that there aren't 1.7 billion Muslims. No, there aren't. They may have Muslim names and Muslim ancestry, but they're not Muslims. There are maybe a few million Muslims in the whole world. Because if there are 1.7 billion Muslims, the things would be different. If there are 1.7 billion people who do not fear anybody except the Creator, who struggle for justice, who help the poor and destitute, things will be different. So how do I see the world today? I see a need for rising. I'm not so depressed in a way that to present the picture of things are done. There is no. The struggle goes on. We need to rise up. We need to organize. We need to build solidarity. We need to be very clear. We need to be clear that our primarily, as a Muslims, primarily duty is to preserve our dignity, to regain our dignity, to fight, to have a dignity. Our fight, our resistance is not to exterminate our enemy. It is to preserve our dignity. And we need to get allies everywhere, in every way. And we need to be very clear. This is not the clash of civilizations. This is clash of good and evil. And it's an individual choice which side you are on. So it can be South Africa, it can be South America, it can be Australia, North America, Mongolia. Everybody has a place in this struggle, good or evil.
Yes, Brother Mahmoud. In fact, Jazakallah, I think very, very profound indeed. And, once again, I want to express my appreciation to you, my thanks to you for taking time out this morning with us right here on Salam Media. And I'm certainly looking forward to this event that is taking place this afternoon in Johannesburg, where I'm sure a lot more will be unpacked as far as the commemoration of this genocide is concerned. So inshallah, looking forward to that. But for now, we thank you. We do appreciate your time. Allah keep you strong, inshallah. Allah grant you the patience. Allah grant you the fortitude. Allah grant you the strength. And the people of Bosnia, obviously, and more importantly, Allah make it easy on each and every one. And as you mentioned, very, very important. At the end of the day, it is about the protection of our dignity as well. And we make dua on this day of Jummah, inshallah. I know that Janaza is also going to be taking place as well. But, and we make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect our honor, our dignity, our self respect, and protect this ummah, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum salam.
Demir Mahmutćehajić with us this morning right here out of Bosnia. And once again, just a reminder, the Nelson Mandela Foundation is a place to be at 2 p.m. this afternoon in Houghton. So if you are in the Johannesburg area, this is an event not to be missed. And because this is a genocide, also not to be forgotten. And again, a stark reminder of what we see playing out in Gaza on a much larger scale. With it, we're going for a break. We'll be back.